You're listening to the Jōrni Podcast. What if the secret to profound healing is harnessing the power of community? Get the insights in today's episode. This episode contains strong language and listener discretion is advised. Hi, I'm Petra Brunbauer, and with decades of experience with sadness, pain, anxiety, and stress, I finally figured out how to leave all that behind. And this podcast shows you how to break free permanently so you can reclaim your sanity and find the self-esteem and energy to go after the life you desire. With real talk about mental health, holistic healing, and the tough journey of coming out the other end. This is the Jōrni Podcast. Welcome to today's episode. In this episode, we explore the transformative potential of group intention and its ability to foster profound healing and connection. Through the concept of the power of 8, we delve into how small groups can harness collective energy to create meaningful change, both personally and globally. This unique approach offers a new perspective on the interplay between science and consciousness. Lynne McTaggart, one of the central authorities on the new science and consciousness, is the award-winning author of 7 books, including the worldwide bestsellers The Field, The Intention Experiment, and The Power of 8. She's also co-founder of the international magazine What Doctors Don't Tell You, the health expo Get Well, and the architect of the Intention Experiments, a web-based global laboratory to test the power of intention to heal the world. A highly sought-after public speaker, Lynne is consistently listed as one of the world's 100 most spiritually influential people. Here is my interview with Lynne McTaggart. Hi, Lynne. It's so great to have you on the podcast today. I've been looking forward to getting to chat with you because healing with the power of 8 is such an amazing topic that we'll be talking about today. And of course, your work in this field for many, many years has had such an impact. And I'm curious to learn more, and I'm sure our listeners are as well. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's lovely to be here with you.
Amazing. And would you like to share a little bit about your story, maybe with our listeners? There may be some that aren't familiar with your work yet and would like to know a little bit how you came to do what you do today and what it is that you do today and what connects you to that. What brought you here?
Thank you for saying that and asking. Well, I came here by accident. I am an investigative reporter by training. I started out my career trying to put bad guys in jail. So my first big story when I was 23 was posing as an unwed mother, complete with hidden tape recorders and all of that, and then a prospective adoptive parent. And I broke a whole bunch of international baby selling rings that way and ended up putting them into my first book called The Baby Brokers. And these were lawyers who were involved in essentially brokering babies. I moved on from there to focusing on health. And it was in the course of that and getting involved in medicine and what's dangerous and unproven. In the course of doing that, I kept coming across very good studies of things like spiritual healing. And I kept thinking to myself, wait a minute. And these were good scientific studies. I kept thinking, wait a minute. If you can have a thought and send it to someone else, that undermines everything we think about how the world works. So I set off trying to figure out why this could be. And I talked to a lot of frontier scientists, biologists, physicists, engineers working in consciousness research. And together, each of them had discovered a little patch that collectively turned into and collectively formed a new science in the making, a new science that said we're not individual, separate selves operating according to fixed laws in time and space, the Newtonian view. We are all we're all vibrating packets of energy attached to each other, inextricably woven with each other in this invisible web, the 0-point field. Now, there was also a lot of evidence in this first book of mine in the area of the field about thoughts, that thoughts are an actual something with the capacity to change physical matter. Again, the investigative reporter in me said, okay, how far can we take this? There was a lot of popular stuff about this at the time, about the law of attraction. But I wanted to prove this. I wanted to test it. So I thought at the time, I have a lot of scientists working in consciousness research, and I also have a lot of readers. The field was in 30 languages at the time. So if I just put them together, I'd have the largest global laboratory in the world. And so that's what I did in 2007. When I published my next book, The Intention Experiment, I invited my readers to get involved. And with experiments, I would set up with these variety of scientists. So I worked with scientists from Princeton and Penn State and University of Arizona and University of California and many European universities who would set up an experiment or be prepared to measure something. And then I would invite my readers from around the world to hold the same thought at the same time, to come onto my website or another platform and hold the same thought. Now, we've run 41 to date, everything from trying to make seeds grow faster, to purifying water, to lowering violence in war-torn or violent areas, to even healing someone of post-traumatic stress disorder. Of those 37, run and measured by different scientists, 37 of the 41 have shown measurable, positive, mostly significant effects. No pharmaceutical drug out there has that consistent track record. It was then in 2008 that I decided to try to shrink this down and to see if we could do this in a workshop setting. Now, I didn't know how to do this. I was kicking it around with my husband and also some members of our team and said, I don't know, maybe I'll put them in groups of 8 or so and have them send intention to someone with a health challenge. So we did this in the first workshop we did in Chicago in 2008, not expecting it would be anything more than a feel-good effect. But the next day, when the parties came back and we asked the recipients of these intentions to talk about their experiences, again, thinking they'll say, oh, I felt relaxed. They said things like this. There was one woman who had been limping badly because she had very bad knee arthritis, and she came in walking normally. And then there was somebody else with depression who said it felt lifted that day. And somebody else who had a bad gut, irritable bowel syndrome, who said that her gut felt normal that day. And then somebody else, the most amazing one of all, who said, I have cataracts and they're 80% better now. My mind was completely blown. I thought, what is going on here? But I started testing it over and over in workshops and settings and even master classes, courses that I taught for year after year after year. And now I've seen thousands of people have so-called miraculous healings.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that journey so far with us. And this is absolutely incredible what you're describing here. And this rests obviously a lot around the concept of intention and where we are focusing our energy, where we are sending our energy. When we're applying this in large groups or in smaller groups, as you have tested now in various experiments, if we focus this intention of something very specific, like healing, sending healing to someone else, do we actually have to know specifically what we're sending this for? Or does this energy, is it intelligent energy? Does it know in that person what it needs to do when we're sending that? Or were these people very specifically instructed? So this person is depressed, you need to help them with the depression, or this person is limping, you need to help them with a limp. Or is this just sending the intention of healing energy in these groups?
you need to focus on what they need, and you need to very specifically spell it out. One of the things that I teach in my courses, and particularly my master class, is how to be specific. Because a lot of people are very general in their thinking. We have 80,000 thoughts a day, most of which are negative. My butt looks too big in this. I hate my hair today. I can't do this. I'm too stupid. I'm frightened, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The world's going to hell in a handbasket. All of those things. And they're just seeping through, and that is becoming our life's intention. But what I try to help people be is very intentional in their intentions. And that includes being as specific as you can. For instance, if you want to heal somebody's big toe, the right foot, you say, our intention is for John Doe to be immediately, completely, and permanently healed of all pain in the big toe of his right foot. I show people how to do that in every circumstance. But I have found, and particularly in our intention experiments, when we haven't been specific, when, for instance, we've just sent love to water, nothing happens. When we focus on moving it to more alkalinity by one specific pH, it happens. Now, a lot of people say, oh, but you limit it. But no, we don't. It gives the universe something to focus on. So many times with our intention experiments, for instance, with one we did with St. Louis, Missouri, a few years ago, we focused on lowering violence by 10%. We ended up lowering violence by 43%. We had a huge response. The universe didn't limit itself, but we focused on where we should, and we picked a particular neighborhood, which was officially the most violent place in America. And that place lowered by 43% compared to all the surrounding areas where violence continued to go up in St. Louis.
Wow, this is fascinating. And it's also a great insight to understand that the specificity actually helps in this case. So we don't just send healing in general as we sometimes may, but we actually are very focused and intentional when we do that. I'm curious, what brought you to this number 8? Because your book, of course, is called The Power of 8. And this is what you discovered in all these studies, that a group of 8 has a certain power when it comes to this intention. But how did you figure this out, and how did you land on this number 8?
Well, it was by total accident. As I explained earlier, I was just kicking around the idea. Well, I don't know, maybe I'll put people in groups of 8. Now, lots of people say there's no such thing as accident. So maybe it wasn't. Maybe there was some synchronicity here. But 8, of course, has a lot of symbolic meaning. It's good luck in China. It's a sideways infinity sign. But the bottom line is, with my experience with intention, 6 people can have an effect. 12 people can have an effect. 8 is like a perfect Goldilocks number. Not too big, not too little. But basically, any small group works as long as it's more than about 4. I think you need 5 or more. And then once you get past about 12, it becomes a little unwieldy. Not everybody gets a turn very often.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we should aim maybe for ourselves also to create these smaller groups that we can work with. What is some of the science behind this when we're talking about actually putting people in groups, having them focus on certain things? How is this different than if I'm just sitting here by myself and saying, okay, I'm going to send my friend healing for her big toe today? How is this different when I add 7 other people and we're doing this at the same time?
Well, we've seen it measurably amplifies the effect. And we now know why, because I've done brainwave studies on it, working with a team of neuroscientists at Life University, which is the largest chiropractic university and one of the most prestigious in the world. They were interested in the power of 8, so they put their neuroscientists at my disposal. And we got hold of student volunteers. We had 7 groups of student volunteers into groups of 8. We put an EEG cap to measure brain waves on one member of each of the groups. We assumed, and working with the team leader, a neuroscientist, Dr. Stephanie Sullivan, we assumed that the brainwave signatures would look like those of meditation, a calming down of the busy mind, an increase in alpha waves, which are the slower brain waves involved in meditation, light dreaming, and theta waves involved in heavier sleep, even delta. That's not what we found at all. It was nothing like that. What we found was a marked lowering of the brain waves that are part of the parietal lobes. They sit back here. They tell us what's me and what's not me. They were dialed way down. And so were the temporal lobes, also involved in that, and the right frontal lobes involved in worry, doubt, negativity. All of these things were dialed way down. And these were people whose brainwave signatures were almost identical to those studied by the University of Pennsylvania, Dr. Andrew Newberg, a noted neuroscientist who studied Buddhist monks during ecstatic prayer and Sufi masters during chanting. Our brainwave signatures of these students were almost identical. They were in a state of ecstatic oneness, just as a Buddhist monk is. So the difference is, in a group, you very quickly lose your individuality and enter a state of oneness that you don't get to experience ordinarily. We all talk about we're all one, but we don't experience life that way. We experience life in total separation. And we experience life as separate people on a separate planet in a separate universe. So we don't really experience what it means to be part of a larger whole. But we do during Power of Eight groups and also the big intention experiments. I get the same feedback. I've been surveying people since 2008 with every intention experiment to ask them, how was it for you? Thinking they're just going to say, oh, that was nice. But I get experiences like this. I was crying uncontrollably, or I had goosebumps up and down my arms, or I felt like I was in the tractor beam of Star Trek, and also reporting major changes in their lives. About 40% say, when they're involved in a peace intention experiment, that they have made up with their estranged partner or parents or children, or they're getting along better with their coworkers or boss, or they have an illness. About a third say, 30%, 36% or more say that they have an improvement or a downright cure in a physical condition they have, some sort of medical condition. And then, most amazing of all, about half say they're more in love with everyone they come in contact with. There are big changes that happen in the big intention experiments, but in the groups themselves, I've seen 3 people get up out of their wheelchairs. I've had 2 people throw away their crutches. After one Power of Eight group, I've had many, many stage 4 cancers recede. There was a woman called Esther who came to a retreat of mine a year ago. She had stage 4 cancer. Doctors didn't think she was going to survive more than a few months. It had disseminated this melanoma all through her body. The group there brought her to a beautiful library. We had met this retreat in a beautiful stately home, a 16th century stately home in the north of England. And we held the whole retreat there. It was astonishing. Her group, Power of Eight group, did an intention for her on the first day. And she came out of it saying, I am healed. She went back to Switzerland, where she lives. She never did any chemo or radiation before or afterward because she's a naturopath. Just did some natural therapies, but within a few months, after the doctors giving up on her, they couldn't find a trace of cancer anywhere. We've seen that over and over and over again, extraordinary, miraculous healings. I've seen one woman who was going blind, Lori McLeod. She was going blind. She had retinal damage in both eyes. Doctors could do nothing for her. She was part of my Power of Eight Intention Masterclass, which is my class where I teach people and then I put them in groups for a year. and watch what happens. And Lori's group did an intention for her. And the upshot is she now has 20/20 vision. I see this all the time with just about every illness, but also not just illnesses, financial issues. A lot of people who are in debt come to the masterclass and get these amazing windfalls. I had one woman who'd managed to get herself into debt by $2,000 or $3,000, and she had gone on a holiday and overspent. So her group did an intention for her. Right after that, she got a call from the hotel telling her they accidentally overcharged her, and they paid her back exactly what she had overspent. And we've seen people launch new careers, set up clinics, health clinics, create new jobs as a coach or a charity worker or something that is the thing they always wanted to do. They get the courage. Lots of people have written their first book with the Power of 8 Intention Masterclass. So the point is the week-on-week work with the group, just 1 hour a week, is totally transformational.
And by what you're explaining here, this sounds like it actually works incredibly quickly. So if we were, for example, to take a more, let's say, traditional approach, say I broke my leg and then I had the cast and then I went for physio for 6 months after, that takes a long time span in human time. But when we begin working on an energetic level, it seems that these timelines don't really exist anymore. Is that something that you have found in these intention experiments and groups as well?
Oh, much quicker than normal. For instance, talking about breaks, Blair Hornbuckle, he was also part of my masterclass. He fell down the stairs and cracked a number of ribs. And the doctors told him not to move, not to do anything, and it was going to be a few months. His masterclass did an intention for him, and he was essentially healed 3 weeks later. He was lifting bars. He was doing all kinds of things right away, and it got immediately out of pain. One of my favorites on this, though, is Lisa Pickle. She had a genetic liver disease that created all kinds of fibrosis, scarring in her liver, and also a swollen spleen. And the doctors told her that she was due for a liver transplant, and there was nothing they could do. She went for her first Power of 8 group and could feel all this energy going through her. And that's what many of my people explain. Part of that group experience, whether you are in person or online together, just as we're talking to each other via Zoom. Most of my groups in my masterclass meet on Zoom and still have amazing experiences. The same. The ones I'm describing are mainly from Zoom. Lisa does this one intention, feels all this energy. Upshot is she was due for a scan a few months later and went, and there was no evidence of liver damage. Her liver was completely normal. She doesn't need a liver transplant. Now it's a few years later, it's still totally normal. And she has letters from 2 liver specialists, 2 doctors who were liver specialists, to say that she's completely healed. One Power of 8 group. Sometimes it happens really quickly. Sometimes people have to take a little more time, but with the help of a group and meeting week after week, with the people who meet regularly, it is the vast majority end the year with some major transformation. Whether it is finding a new home, I've had numerous people find the home against all odds or sell their home against all odds with the help of their group. And oftentimes if they find a new one, the house or the apartment is far better than what they expected. So we see that. We see people, as I say, starting new businesses, getting windfalls, tax windfalls, or getting grants. I had a woman who was down to her last 200 pounds. She was British. And she, all of a sudden, the help of her group, gets a windfall from Lloyd's of London, where she had worked from years before, saying that you're eligible for a grant. And she got a nice big check from it, enough to set up a new business. I see these kinds of miracles all the time to the point where they're not miraculous at all anymore.
Yeah, it definitely works on a different kind of timeline. That makes it very exciting. So, can people actually form these groups of aid just in their neighborhood or in their communities? Or is there something they need to learn first, some concepts or some ways that they do the intentions and things like that? Would you obviously would recommend that they take your master class, but is this also something they can then bring into their communities?
Oh, definitely. If they join my masterclass, they will learn a lot of the techniques of using intention. We have other courses for real absolute beginners, but I'm thinking that your listeners are probably not absolute beginners. So once they take the year-long course, we create groups for them from the people who are taking the course in their own time zone. So they have people who they can speak to on their preferred meeting times. We also set up that for them. And they meet, and I have coaching through the year. So I have 6 2-hour weekly sessions in the beginning where I teach them all of the techniques, the 13 keys to intention mastery, how to use intention with relationships, how to deal with self-sabotage, and also worry and thriving in these uncertain times, how to counter negativity, other kinds of negativity, your own and others, and much more. Unlike a lot of teachers, I'm live and interactive. So I'm meeting with people right there and working with them, and it's interactive. And we work together in the beginning, and then we put you into groups where you meet weekly, and you can meet with me quarterly, where also I can answer questions, I can hone your skills, I can coach you. So once they have that, we also have lots of free tools people can use, tools that people can take and bring intention out into their neighborhoods. Because a lot of people now are really worried about what's going on. And I remember thinking about a year ago, boy, none of these guys who are in charge know what they're doing. We need an army of change makers. And I suddenly thought, we have an army of change makers. We've got tens of thousands of Power of Eight groups around the world who are meeting regularly. What if we brought them together and gave them some tools? So we've done that on my community site. So people can also connect with other people and other Power of Eight groups to work together, and they have loads of free tools. They can also be part of my giant peace intention experiment that I'm running February 1st. I'm working with Gaia, the Netflix of Mind, Body, Spirit, and they have filmed a documentary about my work with the intention experiment and the Power of Eight. It's a free documentary that'll be available and is available now. We'll provide, I believe, the URL for this because it's totally free. Everybody can watch it. And at the end of it, it's an invitation to take part in our live peace intention experiment. I'm going to be running one from Gaia's headquarters, but it's going to be live streamed around the world. And we invite everybody to come because it's going to create peace, not only in our target city, but also in everybody's lives. Because as I mentioned earlier, one of the most amazing things about intention experiments is the mirror effect. When you send out intention, your life becomes more peaceful. Your life becomes more abundant. Your life starts working better. And I've seen this now, as I say, with hundreds of thousands of people since 2008. Here's the most interesting part of this, too, and why this is really almost like a contagion of peace. I have seen people, and they've reported back, as I say, I survey people who take part in my experiments and have done for many years now, saying, how was it for you? But it keeps going on. I have people who have written to me saying, that peace intention experiment you did in 2017, that changed me. Now, in 2017, I did an experiment to lower violence in Jerusalem. And I had special equipment so I could stick cameras in 9 different locations. So we put cameras in 8 different Arab cities in conference rooms, from Kuwait to Saudi Arabia, etc. Ninth camera was in an auditorium of Israeli Jews. So we had Arabs and Israelis taking part in this experiment to lower violence. Because of the equipment, I could speak to each conference room individually, and they could speak to each other. And afterward, when I asked them how it was, these people who were hated enemies started sending love and peace to each other, even started saying, "Your God is my God. I love you, brothers and sisters." This kind of thing went on and on and on. It's actually filmed in the document, and it's in the documentary of Gaia. Now, what I also recognized, looking at some evidence from Harvard University about the ripple effect of social networks, a scientist called Nicholas Kostakis, a sociologist, has demonstrated that when people are happy, they're more likely to have happy friends, not because they self-select happy people to be with, but because of the natural spread of happiness. Same thing happens with negative feelings like loneliness or even obesity. But the most interesting thing of all is good deeds and altruism. When somebody is nice to someone else, it goes 3 degrees down a social network and keeps working. So let's say Peter is nice to Paul. Paul is more likely to be nice to Janet, who's more likely to be nice to Sam, who's more likely to be nice to Susan. And so it goes on while Peter and Paul and all of them keep being nice too. It keeps carrying on. So I started thinking about that effect. Let's take the Israel-Gaza intention we did last year. We had 30,000 people on it. Let's say all 30,000 have that mirror effect, just for numbers' sake. And let's say they all know 150 friends, the classic average. That ripple effect, it would reach half the population of Israel. And I worked out if that carried on, we would hit pretty much 7 billion people, which is close to the population of the world. So for me, the big element of the peace experiment is going to be the mirror effect that carries on and on and on. So I am essentially tagging this as heal a city, heal yourself, heal the world.
That's so powerful. And just to imagine for our listeners as well, it all starts with ourselves and what we have internally going on, what we then put out into this interconnected field, and how that then ripples the groups of 8 and beyond that. It's absolutely amazing if you think just this one piece that starts with us and we can reach almost the global population. How fascinating is that? So listeners, I just want to put that out there. February 1st is when this peace intention is happening live, and this is with Gaia TV. And Lynne will be broadcasting this so you can participate, and you can participate online, I'm assuming, as well. This will go sort of on the internet and everything as well. Is that correct?
Yes, it'll be live streamed on the internet. So anybody who wants to tie in and listen in and take part, if you check out the Gaia documentary, they will also have the links. And we will provide links as well on our website, lynnmctaggart.com. And we'll be providing this show as well with all of the information that you need.
And we will make sure that we put that in our show notes so that our listeners know where to find the documentary. They know where to find your masterclass, which is starting in February as well. And they know how they can participate in this intention coming up in February 1st. So we'll make sure we do our job and link all of that to make it easy for the listeners to find that. I feel the more people that can participate in this, the more effect we can have and have so much change happening in the world, hopefully. So I definitely want to encourage everyone to participate and take some time out of your day and join Lynne and the Gaia TV team for that. I'll be there as well. I'll be tuning in on February 1st. So maybe I will see some of the listeners there and then join them in energetic connection. So thank you, Lynne, for mentioning that. And how wonderful that you're doing a documentary with Gaia TV. I love those shows. So I think this will be a very impactful thing for everyone to watch. And on that note, I want to thank you for spending this time with me today and sharing this wisdom that you have uncovered and investigated and studied over the past years and years. There's so much great information there that I feel doesn't get talked about enough, and yet it has such a huge impact on individual and collective lives that I'm stunned every time on why we don't talk about this more. So thank you so much for putting that out in the field today and sharing that with our listeners.
It's been my delight. Thank you so much for having me.
My absolute pleasure, Lynn, and take care.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen in. If you enjoy the Jōrni Podcast, please support us by subscribing, sharing on social media, and leaving us a review. We appreciate you. And you can find more of The Jōrni on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and our website, thejōrni.com. Sending you love and courage, and see you next time.